Okay, we just finished talking about the difference between a DACL and a SACL, and the only place where SACLs appear in Windows is auditing. That's kind of weird. Okay, so if you remember, folders tend to inherit the permissions. So for example, if I go in here to mechanical and I add a file, some sort of a text file or something, that text file is going to contain the exact same permissions as what the previous folder system had. Okay, so everything is just inherited. Okay, so inheriting is good, right? Inheriting means I can go to the engineering one, go to this guy, set its permission, and they'll cascade down to all the rest. So, for example, here's where I would put the engineering group, and that meant everybody would be able to read, for example. And then underneath there, I would go in and make some tweaks. Okay, so cascading down and however you want to call this, that's a good thing, okay? It's nice because it limits the amount of work I need to do. I just set things, set it at the top, fire and forget. That's great. Okay. Now, one more time, you guys remember how this thing works is that if there are multiple groups that you're in, it flattens all the allows together and then flattens all the denies together and subtracts the denies from the allows. I have seen people, okay, do something stupid, okay? And I don't like using deny just because of how silly it could be. So for example, if I want to go in here and add a particular guy, let's just say for some stupid reason that I'm going to select users, and so who's in the users group? Well, everybody, right? So if I was to go here to deny and say, deny read and deny write, okay, if I was going to do that, you should be leaping across the keyboard going, no, don't do it, don't hit the button. Because quite frankly, since everyone is in everyone is in users, putting a deny on read and write, it obliterates your ability to see this folder for everyone, to include the administrators, everyone. So don't do it. It's just so easy to mess up using deny. So just, if there's a way to avoid using deny, then by God, we're going to find it. Hint, hint, hint. Okay, so here's what I want to do. I want to go to engineering, and I'm going to go in here, and I'm going to go to properties. I'm going to go to security, and I want to add. Okay, and I'm immediately going to go to advanced. I just like this interface a little better. Okay, so I want to add, and what am I adding? Well, I'm adding the local engineering group, right? Okay, the local engineering group. Okay, found two of them. I want just that one. And what they're going to get is just, read, list, but not write. In other words, everyone gets read to begin with. Okay? That makes sense? And it automatically says, all folders and subfolders. Great. That's exactly what I want. Okay, so I'm going to hit apply and I'm going to hit OK, and we're kind of sort of done with that one. So inside here, I'm going to go to the civil guy and then add more permissions, because these guys get more, right? So I'm going to edit. Well, actually, let me go to advanced. I just like the advanced thing a little bit better. Okay, so I want to add one. And so my security principal now is going to be, which one? This is civil. So it'd be ENG civil. I'm going to hit check names. Yep, I just want that one. And then, okay. And so this time they get write permission, right? I'll even get modify, right? I'll give them everything except for full control. Okay, I'm going to hit OK and apply, and we're good to go. So what I've done here is, so because, whoever, I don't remember it is, Jane Doe is in the engineering group by virtue of the fact she's in the global. And then she's also in the civil engineering, therefore she gets write permission. So it's the layering of those permissions. Everyone gets read to start with, and then you add write where you needed it. Okay? And so adding permissions works really well in this inherited mode. It's not perfect though. Okay. Let me give you an example. Let's in this example I had before with the auditors, that asterisk, the accounting example. I have a folder underneath I'm going to go ahead and just create one. Okay, so let me hang on a second. So I want to go here, and I'm going to call it audit. And so somehow somebody is auditing the engineering division. Well, even though it's under engineering, I want to deny them read permission. Because remember, anything that right now they've inherited it, right? So if I go to here, it's going to show that everyone in engineering can read. See? Well, I don't want that anymore. So how do I do that? I can go in here to edit, and I can go in here and change these things and but see how these things are grayed out? Well, how come I can't change that? Well, I could go over and hit deny. Oh, please do not. Okay, don't do that. There's another way of doing it. And the way you do it now is you temporarily break inheritance. Okay, see where it says disable inheritance. So at this level, I say disable inheritance, and when you do that, it's going to come up and say, hey, do you want me to give you a blank slate? You know, nothing, and you have to start over? I almost never want that. Convert this one to the explicit permissions. Yes. So it's now going to just start over. And now I can go in to the engineering people and, for example, take them out. I mean, right? I don't remove them. I could go in there and tweak them, but why not just remove them? Wouldn't that make more sense? By the way, I probably have to add an auditor. I skipped that step but I'm just go ahead and remove these guys. So breaking inheritance allows me to go in here and now there's two ways you could have solved this problem. Well, three ways you could have solved this problem. One is you could have used deny, but that's horrible. Another way would be just don't nest it underneath the dang thing you want. Pull it out someplace. You know, have it in some other location that's not covered under inheritance. That's a viable option. But I specifically wanted it under engineering. So I went in there and I broke inheritance and then started over. Now everything from this point on is going to have inheritance turned on. So inheritance gets started at the top, and then you break inheritance and then inheritance picks up again. So you might think that, by God, you better document that. Yeah, big time. Anytime you go into one of these structures, let me just give you an example. Let's say that some other system administrator came along and said, hey man, we need to add, the kumquat group to this. And so they go to engineering and they add the kumquat thinking it's going to cascade down to all of them and we're all done. And then hey, I can't get to the audit thing. What? How come? Because they didn't know that the inheritance had been broken. So just like that access matrix, man, mark it in red or something where, you broke inheritance to be able to make that thing work. Okay. So quite frankly, none of the options are perfect. The deny option, moving the folder outside of the scope of the inheritance, that's not very good either. And then breaking inheritance and starting over again from scratch, that's probably the best of the three, but it's still not without some problems. Okay, so far so good? Okay. So now we're going to create a share, which is what this whole thing is about. So I'm going to go back up to this guy and say, I want to right click on this engineering guy, okay, and go to properties. And this time I am going to turn on the sharing. Now, once again, I'm going to immediately go to advanced. Okay, I'm just telling you. I want to share this folder. What do you want to call it? I'm going to leave it at the default. And then the permissions. Now, this is funky, all right? So I am not going to set an access control list here at this level. Instead, I am going to have everyone do full control. And if you're kind of freaking out, going, wait a minute, doesn't that violate every single rule we've ever learned about, access control and least privileges and all that? Well, quite frankly, it's not used for that. I can understand back in the Windows for Workgroup days, having share permissions made an awful lot of sense. But now, the only thing I use share permissions for is for enabling and disabling the share in one heck of a hurry. I showed you an example when we went to, I'm going to just go ahead and just go to computer management where you see all the shares. You remember this little demo here where I go to the shared folders and look at the shares and so I want to stop everybody, kill everybody out. I can stop sharing, that kind of thing. Okay. And I can, that basically has the same thing if I want to just stop sharing. Or what if I just want to make them all read-only? Well, the way you do that, I would just go here and go to properties, go to sharing, and basically go here and just go take these guys out. And so they could have read permission, but they couldn't do any writing. So like in the middle of a backup or something, or doing a restore, maybe I want to go ahead and give them read permission, but they just can't change anything. So this is what I use this first gate for. So there's 2 security gates when coming from the outside. This gate right here is not used at all if you're on the server. Okay. But when you're coming from the outside, then you have 2 gates. You have the share gate, which I basically just neuter and basically say everyone has everything. And then the NTFS permissions, which is what we just set up with the engineering group. And then underneath that, we had a civil group. And we have people that start off with read permission, and then they later get added on write permissions to the things that they need. Okay? You sound good? Okay. Okay. So next thing we're going to do is, in theory, fire up our Windows 10 guy and connect to this guy. I'm not going to do that. I'm going to cheat and just kind of walk you through it, so to speak. So I'm going to go back to my Explorer here, and let me maximize this guy. So if I go to network, okay, now on your machine, if you hit network, probably one of the first things it's going to do, if you're on your Windows 10 guy, you're going to get a little message. Hey man, the network discovery is not turned on. Is that okay? And then it'll be a banner across the top that says, hey, would you like to turn it on? Yeah, we're going to have to turn it on. And so I go to server, and then I see my engineering group, and underneath there I get to see all the things we just did. Isn't that pretty cool? Okay. So let me get back to my server guy, and you know, one of the things I can do is map a network drive. I can go here and say, I want this to be drive Q or drive E for engineering or something. That works. And there's another way you can do it. And set up mapping network drives is kind of old school. I mean, it's still being done. In fact, here's a network drive right here. It's drive Z. But another way of doing it is basically go to this PC and then go down here to the network locations and do a right click and say add network location. And here you type in the UNC path. Okay, the UNC path. And the UNC path is, like we described before, / server1 / the share name, which is engineering. Okay? And that makes it so that it just shows up down here without a drive letter. Okay, I'm not going to do that because we're on the same machine. All right, is that kind of making sense? So 2 ways you can connect with it, using one technique to mount a drive letter, and the other one is for, well, no, I don't really need a drive letter. I'll just go down here to network node, you know, just like I do when I get my VirtualBox, you know, a guest editions thing. Maybe it'll look just like that. Okay, is that making sense? Okay, so let's do a wrap up of the rules, because I love rules, you know that. The first rule is you better start with an access matrix. You need to figure that out before you start, okay? And you're probably going to have to go talk to people and say, is this what you want? And quite frankly, a lot of them are not going to know. They're going to go, I don't know, what do you think? You know, so I'm just telling you. And then name the groups with the suffix so you can tell what they are. Nest the groups inside so less, you know, when I add a user, I don't have to add them 5 times. Use nested names so that they show up grouped together on the list. I kind of like that. Use similar names for the domain groups. Again, OUs do not have to follow the same structure. Like I created a single engineering OU. I did not create a structure underneath it. Okay. Add the user to the global groups. Set the folder permissions with the local groups. Break inheritance when you have a bizarre scenario where you just can't, I don't want to use deny, so I break inheritance. And then simplify the permission on the share by just neutering it and basically saying everyone can have everything because I'm just not using it for that feature anymore. Okay, so that's 10 rules and best practices that you know I like. Rules and best practices. You can be guaranteed that's going to be on the quiz, don't you think? Okay, that's the end of this video, and I'll see you guys in the next video.